Written and I have read, your best invention was a way to steal cred. The truth hurts.
If you Google Nikola Tesla, you get 34 million results.
Tesla, the man, not the car built by a living meme, deserves a lot of credit for his contributions in the development of AC power, as well as for being a futurist and a pioneer in grand thinking. His dreams being outmatched only by a select few, but recently we have seen a rise in people who are convinced that Tesla was some kind of a superhuman genius robbed by a cartoon character called Edison. The truth of course is more complex than that, but when has the truth mattered? There is some soul to these claims though. But it is exactly through this lens that we have seen a lot of films and TV shows made about Tesla recently. I'm talking about The Current War, a film where Benedict Cumberbatch shows his range by playing an arrogant genius, that Doctor Who episode, some TV movies, and this, probably the worst thing I've seen in a long time. The Current War may have been a boring as fuck film, but this is just terrible. Where do you even begin? One problem I have with a lot of biopics is that they often feel the urge to squeeze in a real human being's life into a 3-act structure, which often results in the movies becoming very generic. Let's take the example last year, 2 films about great GB singers. Tell me something that happened in that Freddie Mercury movie that was different to that Elton John movie, other than the fact that one was in the band. I'm sure if you take your time, you can come up with a list, but it's a struggle in it. But here it seems like they took a completely different approach. Vice experimented with taking elements from video essays and putting them into a motion picture, but this was basically a YouTube video, and this can be seen every step of the production. You know how in Kill la Kill the most funniest scenes are when they run out of budget, so they just have the character turn into a rotating piece of cardboard? Well, it's like that, but there's little charm. The sets are an absolute joke, and I don't mean that they look bad for a Hollywood film. I mean they look worse than Space Cop. You could say that a 5 mil budget isn't a lot for a movie that requires a lot of locations, but they really require a lot. Honestly, the best part of the movie were those sequences where the characters just stand in front of a photo of the sky. That's when the film was the closest to being interesting, as it signaled to the audience, we don't have enough to finish the movie, don't take it seriously. Now some of these corner-cutting scenes were acceptable, Tesla being in a restaurant which was literally just a table in front of a picture of a restaurant, no problem. Others not so much. Like the scene where they're supposed to be under a storm, but they don't get a single droplet of water onto themselves. But all of that can be forgiven if the story is written good. And in movies about Tesla, that is apparently not easy to do. Any film about a smart person would be difficult to make, as the general audience isn't very interested in their work. You don't want to bombard them with their inventions, but you want to show them their accomplishments. When I was studying IT, one of my classes included a course on Alan Turing and his work. After the class, I decided to watch Imitation Game, a film where Benedict Cumberbatch shows his range by playing an arrogant genius, and I remember being extremely disappointed in how little the film discussed the hard work that my professor told us about. But now I realize that to do it justice, you would need to go fully in depth, and that's something that most people don't really care about. Like in that Doctor Who episode I mentioned earlier, when the Doctor explains an idea that Tesla had about a wireless communication system and then turns to the camera and says, he invented Wi-Fi. That's basically what the general audience wants.
A world wireless system. That's Wi-Fi. Did Tesla have the idea for Wi-Fi?
Okay, but seriously, you do need to have that balance, and the film tried doing that, but they did it in the worst possible way. The film, instead of having a forced 3-act structure, has no structure. Tesla would meet a woman and then a narrator would pop up on screen with a Mac and tell us about that woman and to Google something. Seriously. We flip back and forward from one time period to another, to dream sequences, to sequences that actually end with the narrator popping up and telling us that the previous scene lied, and to Google it. So what was even the point of it? But of course Edison never apologized to Tesla, but why would you show in an extended apology scene just to say gotcha to the few people who fell for it? You could have spent that time telling something that actually did happen. Every line of dialogue in this movie is exposition, and yet there are so many unexplained things. They keep referencing 50k Edison owes Tesla, but they don't explain why. Well, I know that because I saw The Current War, but how the film expects the rest of the 5 people who aren't scared of COVID in the theater to know? It might have been a dare or a loss in a poker game or something. The film doesn't explain, oh yeah, I know, Google it. How do you make a film where every line of dialogue is exposition? And this is basically a cartoon, not just with the uber cheap sets, but there are also 3 scenes that would make my blood boil if my soul hadn't dried up earlier. A scene where Tesla and Edison literally start throwing ice cream at each other, another scene where Edison starts texting in the middle of it on his smartphone, and then a third one where Tesla sings karaoke on a green screen. And then they end with the most annoying narrator in history saying, "Teehee, that didn't happen, I'm so quirky, Google it." And speaking of scenes, not a single one flows into the next. We would follow Tesla in one room and then cut to him in an office and then cut to him in an obvious soundstage, to him in a different room. Most of these shots would be close-ups, making it difficult to understand where and when the scene takes place. I appreciate the film trying something different, but I have a whole new appreciation for that other Tesla movie. At least that one actually discussed how even though Edison in public was a humanitarian and against capital punishment, in private he aided in capital punishment research, thus showing how he was at best a conflicted man and at worst a two-faced hypocrite, never revealing which one. Yeah, that happened in the movie. I remember finishing and then saying, meh. Here, instead of that, we get an annoying narrator, time jumping, and lying scenes which I suppose were attempts at commenting how most biopics make up facts or change them around, as well as referencing how little is known about Tesla's life. The Current War and Imitation Game may have been generic movies that oversimplified the life and work of great scientists, but at least they made sense and didn't have a character pop up on screen and tell us to check out my other videos, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, thanks, but please do so. I don't know, 2 stars would be kinda generous. 0 stars, which if you're new here is not the same as 0 Kelvin.